Hello, I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you would like. The purpose of this channel is educational, in particular in regards to deconversion and atheist issues, in regard to the Bible and theology and other issues. This is kind of a landmark post. This video today. My interest has been long ago when I started this channel to grow it and to see how far it would go and to test the concept of the channel. And it looks like that I'm doing something right because we just passed 50 subscribers. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but it's just been a real wild ride. I appreciate everybody's motives there, and I thank you very, very much. I'm kind of awkward when it comes to these thank you stuff, so I do apologize. It's one of the things, probably one of my great failures in life. Not thanking the people that I should. I mean, I did a whole video on that Wednesday, but, it's just the idea of giving people thanks for just being who they are sometimes kind of bothers me. I get uncomfortable when people thank me. So it's like, no, just being a human being, doing human being stuff. So today is a Friday video. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Where I address the comments of commenters, and so I'm going to move through some of these other ones and deal with various different comments, and so that's kind of the way I'm going to go. Freebird of Reason writes on last week's weekly Friday video, 6 days ago, he says, good video. I would be surprised if there was an army of chariots and swords and evidence. I would expect this to be the case, especially if the army was once marching on the seabed. Did Moses close the sea and then drown the following army, or have I got that wrong? There would have been hundreds of pieces to be found. If we take humans away from the earth, there are no gods to be found. Gods are in the human mind. Even the word God is man-made. It's just letters on a paper, just the same as money made from paper. And the human mind translates that into wealth, but it's only paper. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I mean, if an entire Egyptian army was drowned, as the Red Sea says, there's very interesting things that are dealt with there. So you would see a lot of corruption of such army. The first thing that would go would be the bodies and the skeletons. A sea environment is a very harsh environment. After thousands of years of passing, I doubt a single human body would be left. You would also have very little, the corruption level on anything metal or wood, it would be really, really high. And so finding anything intact, the fact that they found something is an amazing story. The issue I have is the instant interpretation of, we found a chariot wheel, so therefore it belonged to Pharaoh's army. There's a lot of dots to connect there that just don't work. And so that's kind of been the problem all along. So there's that. The whole story. I read one commenter, I can't even remember who it was, who said that it's 10% archaeological find and 90% leap of conclusion and interpretation. That to think that that's, that was Pharaoh's army that got drowned by the water. So it's just it's another aspect, though, if you want to judge the character of the God of the Bible. What lessons was he going to teach all those people? I mean, when you look at the plagues that hit Egypt, there wouldn't be anything left of Egypt. I mean, Egypt would be literally rubble for thousands of years, for another 100 years at least, before they would recover. You'd need a couple of generations just to recover the people that died, the firstborn, the dead, the whole if you're a firstborn, that would have devastated their economy. They got nothing, no comedy left. They got nothing to live. You're going to have massive starvation deaths and other deaths and disease deaths afterwards. The whole story of the Exodus, when you really look at it from a big picture point of view, how did Egypt survive? Egypt should have been crushed completely, but they did survive. And there's no record of them going through, a massive bunch of plagues. There just isn't any. So the whole thing is smacks of a origin story for a group of people that is full of mythology, and that's kind of the way it is. So yeah, it's when we look at God, yeah, he is very much a creation of our own brains. And when I talk to people that still believe, and I make mention that, it says the God that's in your head is a God you've created to do the things that you want that God to do, and that becomes a point of conversation. Some of them get angry about that statement, and I think it's because they realize it's the truth, but they just don't want to admit it. Sweaters in harmony. Recently, I heard an explanation how myths prevail through time, and I think this may be applicable to Bible stories and their enduring nature. Now, I don't think I have the ratios correct, but the myth theory I basically heard said this: in order for a myth to stand the test of time and be believable, it has to have at least 50% sustainable fact, taking place in a documented time in history, mentioning actual historical figures at the time, etc. The remaining 50% or lesser amount is made up pure fantasy fiction. Perhaps this explains why world religions, ideologies have lasted as long as they have. There's just enough there to be many folks to believe the claims. Ed, what are your thoughts on this? Yes, apparently the folklore believes about lemmings intentionally plunging to death as falls. I encourage you to look at the story Walt Disney Corp for their influence on lemming behavior to understand the full story. First of all, as far as myth theory goes, I think there's a lot of truth to what you say. For instance, to the ancient Greeks, the whole Iliad story was true. Now, for years, people said Homer was just a great mythology person, writing about things. But, what happened was we discovered that Troy as a city might be a real place. And there's a lot of things similar with the Bible there. The Bible has real places. It has real historical figures that did exist. The Old Testament, for instance, mentions... that's probably what makes the Egyptian story a little bit less believable, because the pharaoh in question is never mentioned by name, just the pharaoh. But other historical figures later in the narrative, like near the end where they talk about Cyrus and Darius, the various rulers of Assyria, Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, Cyrus in Persia. This is what makes it a little bit more believable. And to be honest, it's closer probably to the original writing. Those events are closer to the original writing of the actual Old Testament. And so that's why it's a little bit more believable. I think when you look at the best mythologies, the best urban legends, they're a good chunk truth, okay? And maybe even accurate reflection on the event. It's the supernatural bullshit that comes in sometimes, and it's just made up as an explanation of how that happened. If we were to actually look at those events, you might find something very, very different. I think your theory has a lot of merit to it. I don't know what the percentages are either, but I think other things that make mythology work are people want it to be true. Like a life after death story, people want that to be true. Having purpose, meaning, significance in a religion is big too. If a person has invested a lot of their personality, like me, I'm probably a great example of this. I had invested a ton of my time, my life, my money into believing this is true. And so I had a great deal of sunk costs in economic terms to get over in order to lose my faith. When people hear my story, for instance, they really believe it because I have a lot more to lose than to gain by deconverting. But the truth of things just didn't, I couldn't get past it anymore. I couldn't get past that evolution actually had a better scientific data theory about how we're here. That cosmology had a better understanding of how the universe began, that abiogenesis, although still not proven, is probably a far more likely event of how life began. And over time, and give the universe enough time, anything is really possible within the laws of physics and chemistry and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where I came from. When you have a lot of invested into a myth, I think the mythology theory is good. I think that's why, for instance, creationists fight so hard for the first chapter of Genesis being history. I think that's why you'll see Christians fight so hard for the Gospels, because they want these things to be true. And there's a lot of truth to some of it. The world did come into existence. So having an explanation of that checks off a box for religion too. I think part of the reasons mythologies stay going is that idea of partial truth. I agree with that to an extent. There are sweaters in harmony, but I also think there's a lot of personal investment into a religion that people have to get over before they get rid of it. I miss that kid. This is 5 days ago, and desire doesn't equal truth. God does not exist because you are a series of events in which this universe was created. Yeah, I mean, the more I kind of jump starts from my last comment there. It's hard to get over the idea of God. I mean, if you want to throw God into that little gap of where the singularity came from at the beginning, and that's only one theory, by the way. There's a ton of theories about the origin of the universe. The two that are most prevalent, are singularity and some other one that I can't recall at the moment. But there's a couple of them that are competing right now, and eventually scientists will come up with ones that are better. But I don't know. I think this is, from a deconversion standpoint, this is a hard one because your religion gives you a lot of meaning because it makes your origin special. It makes who you are special. And I think that's the real problem with it. There's a lot more. It's not so much about the truth of whether the mythology is true. It's more about the personal connection to a religion that makes it hard to deconvert. I know a ton of people that are Christians, and if you talk to them, they're down. It comes down to, I want to see my dad again. I want to live forever. I don't want to die, that sort of thing. And I think that's kind of cool in a way that taps into those boxes. And people ask where that comes from. I think it's a very highly overdeveloped survival sense. We have developed this survive, and then we face an inevitable death and we say, hey, I'm going to survive that too. And that's part of probably origin of a lot of religion stories, is having a life after death story. From, Valhalla, where if you die a glorious death, you'll live forever, dying a glorious death every night and feasting, to, Christianity, these very sophisticated grace entrance into heaven. So that is what goes on. Myron, I think having a good mic would be great for your videos. It's up to the video standard by a lot and also make listening nicer. I think resolution is less important, though. The current is probably kind. Yeah, I mean, my technical knowledge is really low, Myron. I'm just not. That's just not me. I have a really difficult time with some of that stuff. It's one of the weaknesses I discovered when I went to college, is learning computer programming, learning technical issues is a lot more work for me than I thought it would be. I think if I really felt there was a real important reason for it, I would do it. So, but it doesn't always work that way. Let's see. Marked Fiends. This is 5 days ago on my Rabyd Ramblings Deconversion. I don't want to be bitter. That's a couple of weeks ago. The video was dropped, but he just commented 5 days ago. He says, "Hi, I hope you're doing well, and I'm sorry to hear how Christians treat you now with their love since you stopped believing. I have never been a believer. I'm an atheist since childhood, but I really feel your pain since for the past year I've been sucked into deconversion stories, religion, and psychology in general. Why? I had a relationship a year and a half with a Seventh-day Adventist girl. I had nothing against the religion and religious people, but I have walked a really long and painful road now. Long story short, we broke up because she realized I will never believe in God. She betrayed her best friend since childhood by ending up together with her best friend's ex-husband, who is a part-time priest in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Her best friend did not expect that kind of betrayal. They were like sisters since they both grew up in church. She completely changed from a warm, kind person to a cold narcissistic without any regrets. I recommend that you look into Tharman Tree's YouTube channel. It will show you the psychological world of religion and cults, and you have a new perspective on what's going on in people's mind around you. Take care." Thanks, Mark. Here's the things for you. I have become very painfully aware through personal experience and personal experience that is still going on, that relationships with people that are religious, even though you don't have anything against it, still affects the relationship, because there are certain things that you take as valuable, and then there are certain things the other person takes as valuable. Religion really has a way of forming a person's value system, and you can do anything in the name of religion. We've seen plenty of painful examples, from people flying airplanes into buildings to, strapping bombs on themselves. That's one extreme. But getting away from the extremes, one of the things that people do in religion is they'll cut relationships off without a second thought if they feel that that person is unrighteous. The amount of people I've seen throw away good relationships. I saw one girl, she had this great boyfriend. He was kind to her. He was good to her. He, took care of her a lot of times. He helped her get through a couple rough patches. But she was a believer and he wasn't. And she eventually broke it up with him because, well, you're not a Christian. And she ended up marrying a guy who was a Christian as well, but he was an abusive ass. And I have to say, now looking back at it, she really should have went with the first guy. The first guy would have loved her and taken care of her and would have probably never lifted a hand against her. And this is what religion does, because religion teaches you to stay within the religion a lot. And you end up, turning your back on relationships that could be really good, but you also end up getting in relationships that are really bad. From a deconversion standpoint, this is probably one of my greatest struggles right now. It's very personal, so I'm not going to go into the details, but, I have a different value system as an atheist. I have a code, I have the 9 noble virtues that I borrowed from, Odinism, but, that's just me. I don't really believe much else of Odinism. It's great mythology, and I love reading about it and learning about it. But at the same time, I look at the world differently. When you realize that there's a cutoff point to your life, you want your life to be as best as possible. You want it to be as enjoyable as possible while you're going through it. I'm going to get into that in a little bit with one of the later comments, but the thing with relationships and deconversion, and I will check out that channel. I watch Shannon Q a lot. She deals with some of this stuff, and I watch a few others that when you deal with deconversion issues, the real problem is relationships. I already have a hard time because people ask me about my depression. My depression affects my relationship. I can go to work, I can function, I can feed myself, I get dressed, I take showers, I do everything else. But my depression really negatively affects my relationship. Well, then you add, say, a religious difference where they're religious and I'm not. Yeah, I have a hard time with that too. So, I have trust issues since leaving my last church, and I do appreciate the concern. That day I was just like, I don't want to be bitter. I'm still not trying to be bitter. But I also realize that these feelings are normal as you deconvert, and they tell you something. They tell you something that, that you need to engage certain things and deal with it. If you want to get past the feelings, you really got to get moving. In my case, I know what the solution is, but I'm not really motivated by others to pursue that solution. So somewhere along the line, I got to get pissed off and I got to do something for myself. And, others may not like it, but this is what I got to do. And religious people, a lot of the people that knew me back when, I don't have relationships with a lot of them anymore. A lot of them are gone. And that's just the way it is. It just is, so that's kind of where it is. But yeah, thanks for the comment. I appreciate the concern. And the YouTube channel, I'll take a look and maybe add it to the playlist. I have another one from 4 days ago from Keen. I've been watching you for a bit, but waited to join until I became the 50th subscriber. Hey, thanks, Keen. Anyway, I disagree with some of your ideas, but that's why I like watching. I've deconverted recently, and I like to spend much of my life ignoring what was right in front of me until COVID gave me a chance to start listening. Anyway, I want your thoughts on what some argue, and this was something I believe, that religion has helped to inspire and create eclipses the downside of belief. The faith has allowed many to survive great trials such as imprisonment, war, and suffering. Recently watching a movie, 1917, I highly recommend it for the directing. It's not a particularly religious movie, but it did make me think about how many kept themselves in peril by believing in a higher power. At this point in my life, I would rather believe in myself than anything else, but I know that others would strongly disagree, and that is the need, this belief in a higher power. My thoughts on that are this. If we're going to play the game of whether religion does good in the world, I get very Christopher Hitchens at that point and say, okay, name me a good thing that a person with religion has done that a person without religion could not also do. And probably everything that a religious person does in the name of goodness or God or whatever could be done by a non-religious person for other reasons. Then you flip that around and say, but give me something that's evil that somebody has done that isn't religiously motivated. And usually you'll find a lot of things are very religiously motivated and a lot of things are politically motivated, which I would say a lot of politics these days has become very religious. And I think both religion and politics tap into the same needs of a human being, and they use that to manipulate people to get them to believe whatever and do whatever. I've always wanted, I'm not a big movie watcher, to be honest. I used to watch a lot of movies because I enjoyed them. I still have a bunch on my shelf that I watch from time to time, but I don't know. I got to a point in entertainment for me where I've heard this story before, I've seen this story before, but I get what you're saying about the higher power, that people kept themselves going. Except I know that as an atheist, I keep myself going and I can fight through a lot of things and have without believing in a God. So I don't know that religion is necessary for what you're saying. I think that would be my ultimate argument. You can do good things and not necessarily be religious. Anyway, thanks for being the 50th subscriber, Keen. I'll put you on the list of landmarks. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And about the 50th subscriber, we're up to 52, I think, today as the moment of this recording. I'm usually very hesitant to talk about milestones because I've had a couple times where I've reached a milestone and then a couple people unsubscribed and then I wasn't at that milestone anymore. So I've been kind of waiting until I hit 52 or so and talk about it. So there's that. As far as your disagreeing with me, you're welcome to disagree. I think the only thing atheists really agree on most of the time is that there isn't a God. And I think that's really awesome that you believe that, you understand that. Moving on to somebody that actually does believe in stuff. Jacob Thomas, I don't believe in the Bible, although I have experienced paranormal activity with a group of friends who experienced the same incident. A glass object flew off the shelf When it clear across the room and slammed against the wall, the laws of gravity would never behave in that manner, and we all agreed it was supernatural. I don't have any explanation why immaterial things that appear to have the ability to manipulate our physical world and interact with us in a positive and negative ways exist, that literally hundreds and thousands of people throughout history have testified the same way, shape, or form. A YouTube channel of faith healer appears to be performing legitimate miracles. Tom Loud, legs growing for skeptics, unbeliever gets schooled, and Tom, Holy Spirit chiropractor miracle, bones grow more. That isn't necessarily proof that God or the Bible exists, nor would to worship God like the one allegedly committed by the mass genocide or created hell. Either the revelations men received of the Bible are false or hijacked by other spirits, but can't be certain. I lean towards God that is separate from organized religion and convinced higher intelligence exists. And I think faith healers have the ability through God to heal, even though they have the right understanding about its nature and recorded behavior through the history due to the possible corruption and misleading information. I would love to hear your opinion about Tom Loud in the videos and as recommended from my earlier in my comment. I haven't looked up Tom Loud yet, but he might be a good subject for a video. Here's my beef. As for the thing flying across the room, that greatly depends on who set that up. You would have to have showed me that there wasn't any other alternative explanation. Just for an example, with all these supposedly skeptics get owned or whatever, James Randi, before his death, and his foundation still does this, has offered $1 million prize for any proof positive of paranormal activity. He has never paid the $1 million ever, and his foundation is confidently going forward saying it will never happen. Here's the thing about Tom. I was a Pentecostal, so faith healers were everywhere. Everybody claimed they could put their hands on people and heal people when I was growing up and all through my teen years and all through my time in the Pentecostal church. Here's the problem with almost all of it. If faith healers were true, why aren't they going into hospitals and getting people better? See, because when people really get sick, and I mean real for real, they go to the hospital. And faith healers don't show up there. The fact is, when I look at faith healers, I'm very skeptical now because I know the chicanery and it can look very real, but like the leg lengthening thing, that is an old con. I bet you if you look that up, you would find how faith healers lengthen legs. There's plenty of skeptics that have looked at everything you just talked about and proved all of it false too. As for your belief in a God that's away from organized, that's what deists believe. Deists believe that there's a higher power and higher intelligence. But a lot of them basically say, yeah, and it doesn't give a shit about us. We're just here. And that, there's, this idea of a supernatural being. The problem I had with deism, I was a deist for a little bit. Eventually I discarded it because there was no more proof for that than anything else. Once again, the deist God was somebody I made up in my head, so that's just kind of the way it is. Now, I don't have a problem with you, Jacob. I'm going to be honest, I think the supernatural paranormal stuff is crap. That's my personal opinion. Things flying across the room, you don't know that they didn't. I mean, that's an old squib technique that everything you described to me, movie makers have done in movies. How do you know that wasn't being done? As far as the faith healers go, I remember one guy exposing a faith healer once, because he would walk up and down the aisle and, he reaches over, grabs a cane or a walker or whatever, holds it above his head and then points at somebody and tells them to run up and down the aisle. Well, the person who ran up and down the aisle wasn't the owner of the cane. Okay, it was a misdirection. Magicians have looked at faith healers and various supernatural things like Penn and Teller. James Randi did it for years. And they would investigate these claims, and you would quickly come up with either it's a con, there's a natural explanation, whatever. But it seems strange to me that a foundation deliberately offering $1 million prize to prove supernatural activity never paid out. Okay. Because when you really get down to it, it's people either have convinced themselves that they have supernatural powers or they've convinced themselves that what they're seeing is supernatural. I just don't buy it anymore. I think, whatever happened there, I think there's a little bit of fraud. Somebody's not telling the whole truth. Okay. And that's a reasonable explanation, but that would be me and how I think about it. But whether it's Tom Loud or all, Benny Hinn or all the rest of the faith healers over the years, it's funny that they never go to hospitals and clear them out because it always requires faith. You got to have the right faith. And what it basically means, you have to suspend your disbelief, and then no miracle will happen. But yeah, I don't think so. Free bit of reason from my Rabyd ramblings, the Atheist New Thanksgiving. Great from the heart chat. Feeling free, being free is refreshing. Having a great day, and thank you for your honesty. Maybe we should change the names of the days of the week. It's not very Christian. It's very non-Christian. Is it any different than keeping other traditions, really? No, not really. As far as changing the days of the week, I have to take an objection, because my heritage tradition is represented in the days in about 4 of the days of the week. 6 if you count the sun and the moon day. So I don't have a problem with the days of the week. Every time some Christian makes the argument, well, it's 2020. That's 2020 years since Jesus. I said, well, yeah, that doesn't prove a thing because, Tuesday is named after the god Tyr. Wednesday is named after Woden or Odin. Thursday is after Thor. Friday is either Frigg or Freya. All these are Norse gods. Moon Day and Sunday are very pagan ideas. And then Saturday is named after the Roman god Saturn. I said, so are all those true because they're in the calendar? I mean, the months, are named after, Roman emperors, Octavius, Julius, on and on the list goes. Roman gods. So our calendar is a concoction of Roman, Greek, and Norse mythology. So I don't really care. As far as holidays go, people ask me, are you going to celebrate Christmas? Yeah. Only I don't call it Christmas. I get back more to my traditions and my roots culturally, and it's Yuletide to me now. And, just the end of the year, the beginning of a new one. I'm good with that. And so, celebrating as life turns is not a bad thing. I didn't have any problem this Thanksgiving. I went, I ate the meal, talked to family, religion never came up, and it was good. So I'm good with it. But yeah, I get you. I appreciate the comment. Pure Hell. What a great, some of your YouTube names. I live in a fucking world that is falling apart. Then just hearing about religion, he felt a strong rage inside me. I believe only in silence and evolution. We were not created by anyone. God does not exist. I agree with almost everything in that statement except the tone. I believe, if I believe in anything, I'm not sure this is even a belief, but this is kind of more how I've decided to approach the world. I think being an atheist humbles you because you realize you're not that fucking important, okay? That the world owes you nothing, okay? In fact, the vast majority of the universe, if we were suddenly transported there, we would be dead. The fact that life exists at all is not completely unexpected, given the laws in physics and chemistry. The fact that we live as conscious beings is here. People say, oh, well, that's a long shot. That's why you should believe in God. The fact that a drop of water is formed in a cloud, falls to the earth, and lands on my tongue when I stick it out is also a long shot. But long shots happen every day. Probability doesn't prove, something being improbable doesn't prove that it didn't happen. We're here, so obviously whatever was the probability of that is, it's still good. Is the world falling apart? I'm not so sure sometimes. I think Penn Jillette has a great line about this. He says, the problem is that people believe two things. One, that the world is, he believes two things. One, that the world is always getting better. Two, people always believe it's getting worse. And I think that's, that feeds into our negativity. But my philosophy has now become, if I'm going to have anything good or wholesome in life, I'm going to have to reach out and grab it for myself. I can't, wait for some god or sugar daddy to do it anymore. I get the anger of just hearing about religion. I get it. But I think you need to get past that for your own sake. I label myself a compassionate anti-theist because I understand the delusion that goes along with that. When Mark Tevins talked earlier about how he went through this experience with the Seventh-day Adventist girl and all that, you need to understand that people and their psychology get wrapped up in this religion thing, and it is very, very, very hard to get people out of it. It took me years to realize my faith was bad, and I suspect that people that I love and care about me might never give it up, because the psychology of it is very powerful. And when you realize that people are trapped in this thing, it goes from looking at religious people. You gotta understand, you might have this whole group of religious people that are against you or your ideas, but if you look at their ankles, they're chained to a chain. Okay, they're being directed, they're being manipulated, and when you realize that about people, you kind of, if you have any kind of empathy, you start to feel sorry for the sons of bitches. I look back at myself and I feel sorry for that asshole. Because he was so blinded by certain viewpoints, he couldn't look at the real world realistic. That's why I'm a compassionate anti-theist. I'm not an anti-theist that goes ranting at people and yelling. And despite the name, the Rabyd Atheist, you will find I'm not very rabid in my behavior or get angry like that very often. And I'm rabid about the commitment to atheism. But my problem when I approach somebody that believes is I kind of look at them with a little bit of pity. Because I realize what that's like. And this is a hard thing for some people to get over. It's a hard thing to deal with, because when you start looking at people more as something that has been caught up in something, you begin to realize that religion traps people in a certain mindset. And at that point, you're just going to stop being angry at them, and you're going to start feeling a little bit of pity for them. And realize that it may take deconversion is not easy. It takes a long road. It took me, 3 to 5 years, depending on your psychological perspective, to deconvert. My doubts started way back when I was a teenager, but I figured eventually God would reveal the truth to me. And that was my whole lifelong quest, was to have God give me the answer that would be the final answer. And it just never happened. So, you gotta understand that. And I get mad at the time I wasted. I get mad at the money I wasted. Sometimes I get mad and very depressed about all the friends I've lost. But at the same time, I guess I understand their point of view. I understand how I was duped into something, because the biggest thing, there's a reason why religions want to teach their kids early. Because they take advantage of the mechanism inside children that trust what authority figures say. It's a survival trait. When you see a kid that's about to get ran over by, whatever, and you yell at the kid, get out of the way, the kid jumps out of the way. They don't even think about it. And that's a survival trait, because, kids, because they're so vulnerable, they listen to authority figures to survive. Well, that psychology is why a lot of these theologies and religion and myths prevail, is because you get into their head early and it's hard to get that stuff out. You tell a child that, hell exists, heaven exists, and they had to be a good boy or good girl to live forever. and you indoctrinate them in that in the first 12 years of their life, it's really hard to get rid of that. I know, because that was me. And so, as a former Christian education pastor, I see now how insidious that sort of bullshit is, because you don't really give the kid a chance to really think for themselves. You teach them what they're supposed to think. So, I don't know, it lasts longer for some of us, but dude, what I would recommend to you is stop looking at the world with hatred because you're an atheist, and start looking at it with a little compassion. If it's going to get better, it's not going to get better because we look at it at anger. It's going to get better because we have to look at it with a little bit more of, I need to make the best life I can for myself. And if I can help others do the same along my journey of what's left of life, so much the better. That's it for the comments for this week. Appreciate everybody hanging around. Once again, this is a little bit of a celebration of 50 plus subscribers, so thank you very much. Hopefully we'll hit that 100 soon. But this is a very organically growing channel, so we'll see what happens. In the meantime, I hope that someday that those of you that have joined this channel and aren't atheists, I can convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Rabyd, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.